Welcome to Serious Talk, the Military Minute, the show for military spouses and service members who are building their next chapter in their civilian life in the world of tech. If you're a military spouse or service member and you've been wondering, where do I start? Or how do I break into tech when everything feels like it's changing? Today's episode is just for you. I'm Greg Banks. Thanks for joining us today. Today, my guest is Kate Stoker, Executive Director of the Merivis Foundation, an organization that spent the last decade helping veterans, transitioning service members, and military spouses break into technology careers through a high-touch, cohort-based model. In this conversation, you're going to hear about why Merivis was built and how it's scaled nationally, how their approach using structure, community, and purpose helps people actually finish their training, what changed during the pandemic and why virtual access unlocked real opportunity, why soft skills are becoming a bigger differentiator as AI and data skills rise, and how to use any resource available without getting stuck waiting for the perfect one. It's a real honor to have Kate on today. Let's get into it. Kate Stoker, Executive Director of the Merivis Foundation, huge background in tech, huge passion for nonprofits, and an enormous passion for our military. 10 years ago, you find yourself launching the Merivis Foundation. I'm sure there's a lot of roads that led to that, but tell me a little bit about the journey. It's great to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I love talking about this journey. Last year in 2025, we were celebrating 10 years. And so there was a lot of memories and looking back at the different milestones and sort of what has gotten us to this point. But Merivis, I like to say, kind of started almost by accident. It was really a passion project that took off in a way that we didn't really anticipate. We were trying to do some good for the military community in the Central Texas area, everything down to San Antonio. I live in Austin, Texas. So down to San Antonio and then up kind of towards, Fort Hood or Fort Cavazos. And, it was really just about helping people get into technology jobs. My ex-husband, who's an Air Force veteran, had sort of this vision of, he was working as an executive in the Salesforce ecosystem. He saw the job opportunities. He saw the way that community was growing. And he, through another organization that we were very, very involved in, got very kind of reconnected to the military bases near the Central Texas area and was like, there's this talent over here. I had at the time 10, 12 years experience building up nonprofits, fundraising. I was a stranger to fundraising or building nonprofit programs or doing outreach. My day job at the time was marketing for technology companies. And so it was really just about how do we take the people that are over here and connect them to the opportunity over here and just do some good, change a couple of lives. That's really as simple as it started. And we scrapped together a couple of our friends, put together a working board of directors that was, knee deep in building curriculum and recruiting, mentors and volunteers. And we had our first cohort launch in October of 2015. And it really, again, it was, we all had day jobs. We all had families and commitments. It was really just, let's do some good in the world. And, we kind of stayed on that track for a couple of years until Salesforce approached us and said, we love what you're doing. We love this bootcamp style. And Weeby, who did incredible things for the Salesforce military program, was really focused on scaling and reaching as many people as she possibly could. And she looked at what Merivis was doing, was just like, you guys are smaller groups, but you're going really, really deep. And what can we do to support you in that? And that's when they came to us with some seed funding that helped us scale. This became my full-time job, which wasn't something that I was expecting, but I'm so grateful for. And it's gone through, quite the evolution over the last 10 years, pandemic, shift in the technology sector, now the rise of AI and the importance of data and just how skills have been shifting. It's been quite the wild ride.
Yeah, I got to think if somebody does a documentary on Salesforce one day, they're going to look back to that, say the first 15 to 20 years. That's hardly a start, but the ebbs and flows, right? They have
There's been a lot
really
of it.
Big surge in technology, and somehow all the people that install it, your partner companies, have to keep up. And then you get a really wide partner base. And if there's ever a setback, like we've certainly seen setbacks in tech the last few years, where there seemed to be an overabundance and whatnot. So we'll talk about some of those as we go through today. But I'm particularly impressed that everybody had day jobs. This was something that a bunch of you did on the side.
We did.
I'm an empty nester now, but having raised a couple of kids, I don't remember having time to start nonprofits. So kudos for those who have that vision and passion. But what a remarkable organization. I look forward to unpacking this today. So you started out just looking for the Central Texan community. If you look back I'm sure you do this all the time, but what are some of the milestones? You just mentioned Salesforce reaching out. That was a huge one.
That
What are some
was.
other milestones that ring bells for you?
I mean, the seed funding helping us scale, helping us, and I have, almost 2 decades worth of experience working with the nonprofit sector. And one of the hardest jumps to make is going from a working board with no staff to a staffed, nonprofit organization. Making that jump can be really challenging just in terms of funding and resources. So obviously Salesforce coming with some initial seed funding to help us make that jump was incredible. It was really kind of changed the trajectory that we were on. Dreamforce 2019, which still to this day I believe was the largest Dreamforce ever. We were featured during the opening keynote, CEO keynote, introduced by Keith Block. He interviewed Sheldon Simmons, one of our graduates, and later became a board member about his journey from working as a fueler on, a Navy carrier to now he is a, consultant at one of the largest technology partners that Salesforce has. And so that was something that put us on the main stage. It forced us to, kind of really get intentional about the way that we were growing and the way that we were, kind of expanding our programming. I will also say the pandemic really, really helped. It was in some ways very challenging and in other ways really an opportunity, because during the pandemic, before that, a lot of our programming was based here in Austin, Texas. Again, to your point, we were really focused on Central Texas, San Antonio bases up near Fort Hood and Temple. And part of our cohorts included an in-person week where they were doing, instructor-led training. And we got to the point when we were growing kind of in those early years where I remember when the first person came to us and said, I live in Louisiana. You guys are in Texas. Is there any reason I couldn't drive in to go to this program? And we were like, I mean, very much sort of the more the merrier. We didn't want to put any kind of guidelines on who we were able to serve. And so that was kind of one of those inflection points. And 2018 was a big year. Not only did we get the funding from Salesforce, but we had people coming from outside the state of Texas, which really shifted sort of the geographical area that we were serving. But then we also had people who had gone through the admin training and we're like, we love the way that you all train. We love the cohort model. We love the community. We love the mentoring that all comes with this. Can you do an advanced certification? And so we launched our first app builder class. That was in 2018. And it, that sort of opened the door to where not only are we serving veterans that are starting out in their Salesforce journey, but we're also helping people continue to learn. I view a lot of this kind of pipeline as you can't just be putting a whole bunch of people into the ecosystem. They have to keep growing. They have to keep making space, and using Merivis as sort of this funnel to then, take individuals. I mean, there are people that I still work with who they went through their admin training with Merivis. They're now coming back and saying, Kate, I'm staffing up a project team for this new client. Wow. I need 4 or 5, people with these subject matter experts. Who do you have that's looking for a job? The fact that they've grown, they've gotten so far, in advanced in their career to where they're now coming back and hiring people from that same community that helped them get that start. I mean, that gives me goosebumps. That's what's important, is that it's not just about giving them that skill set and kind of getting them into the ecosystem. Sure. It's about making sure that they're being successful. But yeah, the pandemic was really a game changer because we flipped all of our programming to virtual. One of my favorite stories is I have in my notes still from our 2020 board planning retreat, virtual cohort ? And that was in like February of 2020. Like we had no idea what was coming around the corner. And so we flipped all of our programming virtual. We really kind of retooled it to where it was appropriate for being conducted through Zoom. We launched our first community conference in 2021 to help people stay connected and, continue to learn despite what was kind of going on in society. But at one point, we had about 45, 50 people on a wait list for an 18-person cohort. So many people had lost their jobs, and we were a mechanism for them to get trained and skilled up to an area that was still not even just hiring, but they were hiring extensively. I mean, that was a time when people would come to me and be like, I don't even care if they have their certification yet. I need to staff up these folks that, if there's any sort of experience. So the pandemic really shifted us into some high gear. Again, there's pros and cons to that. We weren't prepared to scale that fast, that fast. And there's a lot of times when I look back and wonder, did I make the right decision? And one of those is looking back at, when we were because again, we had in 2000, I think it was November or fall of 2019, we were featured on stage at Dreamforce, and that was sort of this jump start, to sort of this new chapter of Merivis. And, then the pandemic happened a couple of months later, and for better or for worse, I made the decision that we were going to be putting all of our resources into just getting people trained at a time when people should be looking at infrastructure, at long-term partnerships, at really kind of investing in the business. We made the decision that's just said, hey, there are people who cannot put food on their table, that have no job opportunities. Let's really double down on doing this. And, I like that I can go to sleep at night thinking that I did the right thing. There's certainly times where I look at this and be like, yeah, I'm making up for some of the decisions that we made during the pandemic.
Certainly.
But that was certainly a major shift. And because we went virtual, we were able to serve so many more people. They didn't have to get to Austin to go through the full training. They didn't have to worry about the cost of travel or lodging or childcare or any of those things. They could do it virtually. And it just really, really made our programs more accessible to everyone across the country.
Wow. Those are some remarkable milestones. And what they say, necessity is the mother of all invention, right? Sometimes you just got to do some stuff. I don't know what made me think about this, but you said Zoom. Mm-hmm. Zoom is a company. I mean, the pandemic
exists because of the pandemic.
My mom had COVID that first year, and we didn't get together for Christmas. Our family get together was on Zoom. Yeah. Church small groups were on Zoom. Community neighborhood HOA meetings were on Zoom. Absolutely. So, but those are some incredible milestones, Kate, but there are also a lot of really timely, specific affirmations you're doing the right thing. You started aiming at Austin. People outside found out. You started being in person. The pandemic drove Zoom to do these other things. Salesforce shows up, Dreamforce, all these things almost seem to be, I won't say a kick in the pants like you weren't planning things, but they were very significant levers that helped promote you at the right times, do the right things in the right way. And man, it's been a beautiful story to watch it unfold and grow as fast as it did. How many cohorts did you do in 2019 versus 2020? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, so we went through, again, kind of looking at these chapters of, sort of passion project to starting to kind of get our sea legs and sail. And then the pandemic, we went from 1 or 2 cohorts a year to start. When I came on board as executive director, we did 3 that year. So that would have been 2018. 2019, we did 9. And then in 2020, we did 17 cohorts.
You doubled.
And we kind of stayed in that like 10 to 15 range throughout the pandemic. Then we added on workshops. We added on Merivis Summit, which is our annual conference. So there was a lot of scaling. And, to your point about kind of these, sort of wonderful opportunities that fell into our lap, I truly believe that those types of things will come your way when your heart is in the right place. And very much throughout this entire thing, our North Star has been help as many people as we can, make sure that it's not just a numbers game. We really want to look at the impact and ensure that we are setting them up for success long-term, that this is a career support, not just get your first job and then you're on your own. We really want to kind of support them throughout that entire journey. So I feel like our heart has always been in the right place as an organization. And I think that's just those opportunities come to us because of sort of the energy that we're putting out, the community that we have built. Our volunteers are very much the backbone, and they have been through each of those milestones. They have been with us through it.
I got to think of nonprofit. I've never ran one, but I've volunteered at a lot of them. And I got to think there are mornings you get up or nights you lay down and you're going, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I'm not saying is your passion still, I'm simply saying, is the mission I set out to do still the right mission? Mm-hmm. And when people are showing up that way and volunteers are showing up, and again, when you start going to scale, like it's okay. You can say I can work for no money and I can work 20 hours a day. It's hard to tell the volunteer community to do the same. So
absolutely.
I can understand a lot of headwinds in trying to make that jump. So
yeah. And that's when Salesforce kind of came to us in 2018 and we're just like, what do you need to do more of this? And we're like, we need staff. Like there's only so much that you can do without a dedicated headcount that's responsible for these programs and, fundraising for the resources. One of the things that I tell people a lot in the nonprofit world is nonprofits very much are still a business. They have bills, they have technology platforms, they have all of these things that they have to do. It's just a tax designation, right? Because we're doing a service to the community, and I sure there's lots of days just like there are with any job that, you love where you're like, wow, we're in a tough time right now. The economy right now is really challenging, especially in the nonprofit world, giving is tough when you have uncertainty in the job market and, sort of these economic forces that are beyond our control. People tend to, kind of double down a little bit and protect their finances. So giving usually will drop as a result of that. And we've got a lot of people that are being laid off that are coming to us for, hey, I need to figure out what the next sort of marketable skill set looks like and what can you all do to help me skill up on that. What fuels me is seeing these incredible community members, veterans, military spouses, military, be given the opportunity to live up to some potential that they have post-service. Right. And I still have a file with all the thank you notes I've ever gotten from anyone who went through our program, landed a job, and wanted to let me know. I have a file where I keep that. And, when I'm going through like my gratitude jar at the end of the year, every year, there's a lot of things that come in that's just, what we're doing is really about making people's lives better. And in a lot of ways, it's generational. I'll have people who tell me, hey, I just made it, I just closed on my first house. And it's because I have this job opportunity that you all kind of led me to. I mean, those are, again, like it makes my...
That's fuel in the tank for 6 more months at least, right?
It does. It does. Yeah. Things get tough, but you surround yourself with really, passionate, talented people that have a shared, sort of vision and a shared commitment to the mission. And, this is not me. This is a village doing this. I like to say, I set the table and people show up to make this work. I'm not the one kind of necessarily, making all of this go forward. I just provide people the opportunity to give back and, to kind of see that purpose be realized.
Fantastic. You had a background, your personal corporate life was in tech prior to getting into this. When you sought out to do what you're doing in Austin, was it around tech or was it more around the people and just like, here's some people with talent and here's some needs and that came together? How did tech become the juice for the solution you were going here?
So my ex-husband was working in the Salesforce ecosystem. So he had a front row seat to the jobs that were being created. Okay. And where do we find the talent for this? So that, and a lot of people that we recruited at first were very much from sort of that Salesforce ecosystem. We have now broadened to where we're doing a lot more sort of tech agnostic or platform agnostic technology training, but Salesforce was very much where we started. My background was, kind of on the marketing side of the house, but I had, 20 years of nonprofit experience. So where my ex-husband kind of was like, hey, he's sort of like this vision of, hey, this is something that we could do. This is a problem that we could go solve. I was very much kind of in the weeds. I knew the how, I knew the mechanism. I knew what went into running a 501c3. And then we had a lot of technical experts. Our third co-founder was one of the first CTAs that Salesforce had. So, we had a lot of resources that we pulled in. And what I view as one of my unique strengths is I'm very good at galvanizing resources and pulling people together and looking at, I don't make a point to say I am an expert in technology. That's not what I do. My job is to pull the resources together that can then inform some of these programs and to make sure that we have the funding, that we have the speakers, that we have the subject matter experts. I'm sort of an entrepreneur in that way where I just pull together sort of the resources that make all the programs go around.
And it takes I've been around different businesses over the years, and I got to think a lot. I'll say this the most polite way I can think. A lot of times the people at the top don't really practically understand the weeds of what's happening on the ground. But I got to think your other founder, who's the CTA, if you're technical architect, you understand all the buttons, all the switches, and the vision of Salesforce, understanding where that's going. It's got to set Merivis up to, as you're looking to grow beyond just having that admin cohort. Right now, we've got a vision. So having somebody who technically can apply that, and then you who knows how to fund or do all the other things to actually help that dream take flight, seems like a really good combination of people to have on staff.
The three co-founders really kind of all had these skill sets that complemented and balanced each other very well. And we've been able to continue to that as we've expanded our board and kind of moved on past that sort of initial chapter. Still, I'm very proud of the diversity that we have on the board. It's not all veterans. We have a lot of people that have a lot of business experience that have a passion for the veteran community, but they themselves aren't veterans. So, and then we have a lot of folks that we have military spouses that are represented. We have veterans that are represented. We have technical expertise. We have business expertise. We have marketing expertise. So it's really kind of having all of those different perspectives that all map to functional areas, again, of it being, at the end of the day, a business that just has a really awesome tax designation.
And that doesn't just help Merivis, but I got to think every person who comes through a cohort, right? All of that combined experience is going into value of that. You guys list 3 tenets One is military structure, one is community, and one is purpose.
Yeah.
Can you break those three down a little bit? Tell me why that's the magic sauce and what you do.
It wasn't the magic sauce. It emerged organically as what we found in the way that we structured the programs. We knew we wanted to do a boot camp. We knew we wanted to do high touch. We knew we wanted to pull in mentors. That was sort of the way we designed the programming. Those three tenets then kind of emerged as the organization grew. And it was kind of almost by accident that we looked at kind of, what's the value out of the way that Merivis conducts its programming. Structure, community, purpose. Structure, we're very high touch. There's a lot of accountability. There's a lot of, the way that we have our, weekly assignments and the way that we structure everything that we put out in terms of pre-work and homework for the organization, for the programming. It's got a lot of structure. And there are people who, they can go online and they can learn through, any one of these online learning platforms. And that's great for them. Congratulations, wonderful accountability. You're self-started. That's great. Not everybody learns that way. I don't learn that way. I like to have accountability. I like to have structure. I like to have, this is what we're focusing on this week. And in the community, obviously, we've got an incredible nationwide network now of, thousands of veterans that have gone through our programming or have that come through to volunteer for us. And every single one of them is ready to lift the other one up. And so that community, again, that kind of emerged as sort of this very important and very valuable aspect of Merivis's programs. And then purpose, where we have, and I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, I think it's something like 30-something% of our alumni will then come back and mentor or coach for sort of that next wave of programming. They stay involved in the community. Again, I talk about that person that came back was like, hey, I'm starting up this team for one of this new project. I need folks that are looking for opportunities. All those three things emerged organically, I think, because of the community that we serve, how inherent that is in their DNA. They are not people who leave others behind. There are not people who are going to just sort of coast on other people's work. They're going to get in the weeds with others and make sure that everyone is kind of reaching their potential and attacking these problems and is not struggling with whatever their homework assignments are and helping them find jobs. That all kind of emerged organically, I think, because of the individuals in the community, the military community that we serve.
Yeah. The community there, I think I had the next question I was going to ask was about the camaraderie part of Merivis. I saw in an interview you did about a year ago, you talked about this, and this is, again, I think this highlights what you said emerged. You just stick people who've been in that military community, whether it's the veteran or the spouse, and they just learn how to lock arms and do life together. Right?
Yeah,
so rather early on where you were in person or later when it became virtual, you don't have to tell them, hey, be sure to reach out to other people on your team. That's just who they are.
They do. That's just what they do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, was there anything you did to help set that up? And more to the point, when you went virtual, how did that
How did we keep that going?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, did they organically find, hey, let's do Slack, let's do email, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what did that move to and what does it look like today?
Yeah. So the camaraderie piece, again, I think of it almost as like, and I love to cook. This is one of my side passions that keeps me going at night. But hosting a dinner party, you're just providing the space for these individuals to connect and to develop relationships and to have conversations. And Merivis very much gives that space. The reason that we love the cohort model is because you're going through 7 to 9 weeks of training with these same people. In the admin cohorts, we set them up with squads. They are literally put together in a group of 3 to 4 people who all they do, they're study groups, they're accountability, they're battle buddies. That's what they do. So, it was very easy, especially in the first couple of years, because we also had everything in person. You got the water cooler conversations. I've been working remotely since probably 2008-ish. So I've been sort of in the world of remote work for a long time. And there's a lot of things that you get by going into the office and having that face-to-face connection with people, whether it's going to get coffee in the afternoon or, again, passing in the halls, stopping by somebody's cube, to ask how your weekend was.
Right.
And when the pandemic happened, we really just tried to create as many of those opportunities. We were figuring it out as we go. And that's not something that comes easy to me. I am not the person who's building the plane while flying it. That's not not how I operate. But, we set up the Merivis Summit as, and that's something that we've continued every year, but that was originally a place to continue to learn and to get some community and to, have sort of those group mentoring sessions during, what was chaotic going on outside of our homes. We flipped to virtual. We figured out how to bring in speakers in a way that wasn't about, having one more hour on Zoom. We spun out a lot of our, sort of subject matter experts into webinars that anybody could go to, whether you were in a training cohort or not. One of the things that we also took virtual were mixers. And again, I love the pandemic was such an innovative time because people were figuring out how to do what they needed to do in these really, really creative ways. When we were in person pre-pandemic, we had on the Thursday night of the in-person week, we would do a Merivis mixer, and we would pull all of the people from the tech Salesforce community in to essentially welcome and introduce them to these individuals that are going through the training and kind of get them enmeshed into the community, because that was such a key piece. And we took those virtual. And not only now are we helping our students, we're giving our volunteers an opportunity to reconnect to that community in a new way. So, it was really just about creating the spaces and meeting people where they were. There were people that couldn't commit, and we're kind of coming around to this a little bit right now, just because it's sort of the way that the job market is at this particular moment in 2020, late 2025, 2026, is meeting people where they are. And, when times are stressful, when you've got kids who are trying to conduct classes on a laptop, when people are going into their closets to have a conversation for work because it's the only place they can get that quiet, you've got to learn to deliver things in a little bit of a different way. And I think, to our credit, during the pandemic, we were just trying to create as many opportunities and spaces for people to connect and continue to have that camaraderie, to have that community, to feel like they weren't going through this alone. And a lot of those conversations didn't have anything to do with Salesforce. It was, what are you doing to survive this? What are you doing, to get time with your friends and family that you're not able to see face to face? It was meeting them as human beings and not necessarily as a training organization.
And that's medicine for the soul of these groups of people, right? Yeah. I mean, one of the things I read over and over, just watched the documentary the other night on veterans and PTSD and all that stuff. It's something I just, every so often, I just find myself seeking out media, consuming that. But the need for, they come back from deployment, the service member side, and rarely do they live in the same towns as the people they've been deployed with. So naturally, they're just spread out. In any way, anytime, anyhow that you could find a way to bring those people back together. If they don't talk about Merivis, if they don't talk about Salesforce, just bring them back together. There's something about that. We're not meant to do this life alone. Right. So, I mean, scientists is finally figuring some of that stuff out, but that's not news. That's something we've always known.
Yeah.
But
it's just, give me a community. Let me, just remind me that I'm not doing this all by myself.
Tell me about the boot camp. What did that look like? You mentioned 7, 8, 9 weeks. I understand it was that way when you were in person, but when you go virtual, you probably naturally have some people who run ahead, and you probably have some who need a kick, who are naturally behind. Yeah. How do you avoid that becoming an issue? Describe what the boot camp looks like more now, I would say.
Yeah. So pre-pandemic, it was, again, there was a lot of camaraderie, and a lot of the things that we started in, kind of in our early cohorts, we were trying things. We were like, okay, this is an issue that came up. How do we address it? One of the biggest things is that in the cohort, everybody has a mentor, and we do it differently depending on if you're going through an admin cohort and you're brand new to the Salesforce ecosystem, or if you're a little bit more advanced, you're going through, an agent force cohort or a data cloud cohort. In the early days, we gave you a mentor, and that was somebody that essentially sort of like was your go-to, ensure that you are staying up to date, kind of can explain concepts to you as you're going through. I mean, remember, like when we first started, Trailhead was brand new. Brand new. And, a lot of the homework we were doing, we were coming up with, that was our IP that we were developing. You don't have a lot of people moving. We give out assignments on a weekly basis so that everyone stays relatively step with each other. And then we have weekly huddles where we get together and we talk about real life concepts. How does this aspect of the platform work in real life? Big believer in education, but also there's only so much that you can get from, learning in managed, like Trailhead or books or blogs. You have to go do it. You have to go recognize and have conversations with, hey, this all sounds really great. in theory, but in practice, this is what, can happen. And these are some of the nuances. So our coaches come in and they do a demonstration of this is what, this looks like in the real world.
Right.
And our coaches, we then moved into where, again, kind of evaluating, looking at kind of, what works, what doesn't work. With our admin cohorts, we then eventually set up what we call squads, which is a Merivis graduate leading a small team of 3 or 4, because our coaches, who were incredibly technical and incredibly knowledgeable, didn't remember what it was like to interview for that first job. Or maybe they're a civilian, and as much as they're passionate about the military, they don't necessarily know what it's like to take your military resume and convert those skill sets into like, what, how do I phrase this in a way that makes sense to a civilian hire? And so we implemented sort of the squads as a way to kind of balance that. So now we have coaches that are very technical and have incredibly robust networks and experience. And then we have the squads, which are usually a little bit newer, but they're there to help you with those transition obstacles. In our advanced cohorts, we don't have squads, and we have what we call basically group coaching, because it's so important that when you are I'm going through a data cloud cohort, I don't necessarily need to have just one person. I need to be able to maximize my network and connect with a variety of these experts that are coming in. So we usually do kind of pooled coaching in some of those advanced, just to ensure that the people going through the programming are connecting to all of these subject matter experts, not just one of them. And again, a lot of that camaraderie happens again on those weekly calls. You have people that are asking questions. You have people that are talking about where they got stuck, and they're helping each other out. They're holding each other accountable. And it's anywhere from, I think our shortest one we've had has been 4 weeks long. We've had cohorts that have run 9 weeks long. We've also had series of workshops and sort of hands-on job seeker type of content, whether it's, resumes or, mock interviews, things like that. It's a variety of different programming that has kind of evolved as we've gotten stronger and as sort of the needs in the hiring market have changed.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I kind of tripped and fell into the Salesforce ecosystem as well. And the story, the kind of the thing that we call them accidental admins.
Yeah,
nobody went to their high school counselor and go, you should look at Salesforce. They may now, but it was just different. So everybody came into the space useless, right? Like, I have life experience, but I have no Salesforce knowledge. And it doesn't mean that's not valuable, but that's the one thing we have in common is none of us came to the table prepared. So to your point, the needs are many. From building a resume, learning how to interview. You don't really have to interview to get into the military. You have to pass a physical and some blood work and some stuff. But no, you say yes, they say yes, and you're good. It's different. And I think that's what I have found in talking to many veterans is the trends. How do you explain to a service member who they never showed up and their boss wasn't there? Reviews were regimented. PT was regimented. You've got orders. There's a clear hierarchy of stuff. That's not the case in civilian world, right? Corporate, nonprofit, whatever, you just kind of have to show up and do stuff, whether it's your job or not. And figuring out how to navigate that, what that looks like, and just kind of teaching that aptitude, that hunger. They have all the motivation, they have the skills, but they're just not sure when, where, or how to apply them. So it sounds like you guys have a nice network of folks on all levels to meet that need, whatever it is, right?
We do.
Yeah,
and I think, one of the important things that, when I say kind of, I love that our board has so much diversity. I'm a big believer in, so as an example, a lot of my nonprofit work was, supporting arts organizations here in the Austin community. I am not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a great respect for what they are doing. And I can kind of show, hey, this is what's coming from the other side. I'm not an artist, but I can talk to you about how to build your brand as an artist. I can talk to you about how to network with other organizations that support artists. I can help you go research, funding opportunities for you to pursue your art. I think it's very similar in sort of the veteran community. You've got civilians that are very passionate about seeing this potential be realized, and seeing all of that life experience getting put to good use. And one of the things that I, always try to tell people is you have a value add that your superiors want to hear. So there's a lot of kind of psychological flipping of what their patterns were in the military of, you take orders, you go execute, teaching them that it's okay to question your leadership, that it's important that you highlight a potential obstacle. Like, there's a lot of things where you're kind of almost giving them permission to not follow that same sort of paradigm that they're coming from, because of what can be missed and because of what that, how much value that can create in a civilian or a corporate environment.
Listen to your gut, trust it. It's probably serving you well.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the why behind the what.
Yeah.
What was you've tiptoed into some of these things, but what was your story before Merivis that gave you the skills, the perspective, and even the experience to start a national? I know you didn't set out to start a national nonprofit, but you got there, right? You accidentally fell into a different space. Tell me a little bit about to get to that place. Again, you didn't go to school to learn how to start a nonprofit military skills training program.
No,
right? Again,
not at all.
On the agenda.
Not at
Give
all.
us some background.
So, I went to University of Texas. I'm, diehard Longhorn. I've lived in Austin for most of my life. And, I was very, after I graduated college, went to go work for a technology company in sales. That is just one of the skill sets that I'm very good at, which, is also very strange when you're an introvert and you happen to be good at sales, because you wouldn't expect those two to necessarily like work together, but for whatever reason they do with me. Yeah. And one of my favorite stories, my mom is very much my best friend. And I was working at Dell in sales, and I was kind of, I had my work friends. I would, do happy hour, do lunch. I would go home, rinse, repeat. I just did not have a lot of balance in my life. And my mom, as she says, was the beginning of what, is a very slippery slope, where she was just like, you should just go volunteer somewhere. And I got connected to an organization here in Austin that's really about empowering women in their careers, young women in their careers. And I naturally gravitate towards leadership positions. I was on the board within 4 months because I'm a big fan of taking the challenges, taking the things that nobody else wants to deal with. And that's a piece of, when we do networking events, and it's what's a piece of career advice that you would give to someone. And for me, it's always do the thing that nobody else wants to do. Like always, like jump into that area where people are like, nah, that's not a project I want. Jump into those. There's an incredible amount of opportunity when you take those roles. And I took one for this organization, and it, again, as my mom says, it was the beginning of a very slippery slope. And I, in Austin, kind of became one of the go-tos for young professional development when it came to community involvement and nonprofits, mostly around capacity building organizations, Leadership Austin, Young Women's Alliance, things like that. And then also arts organizations. I was very involved in, the Symphony's Young Professional Group. I still sit on the board of Ballet Austin. And, I just got very much pulled into making the community stronger, making the world a better place, seeing people realize their potential. One of the things that keeps me up at night is seeing potential not realized, whether that is an organization, an event, fundraiser, a person, an opportunity. I hate seeing headspace, like headroom in any kind of opportunity. And I did that for probably, at the time, maybe 10, 12 years of just being a very key piece of the Austin sort of nonprofit community. At the same time, I was working for large corporations in the technology sector. Dell was one, Cisco was one. With marketing, I ran brand campaigns and launch campaigns for Dell. That was sort of what my role was. So I'm used to galvanizing resources. I'm looking to very, experienced in saying these are all the different pieces of launching a program or a product or getting a message out. Who are we talking to and how are we talking to them? And so all of that kind of primed me for my ex to come be like, hey, I think we can go create this nonprofit. And the first thing I said was, is anybody else doing this? I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. And there's a couple of side stories there, but, it was really just this passion for potential that I had in the military community. I have an utmost respect for. Both of my grandfathers served. My uncle was stationed in Germany when I was a kid. And, obviously at the time that my husband was, an Air Force veteran. So there was a lot of respect for the military community. I saw the value that they offered. I wanted to make sure that again, wasn't going unrealized. And like I said earlier, I think one of my sort of unique gifts is I'm just very good at galvanizing resources. I'm not afraid. I mean, by sales background, I'm not afraid to ask for, a large donation or a corporate sponsorship. That's just something that comes very easy to me because I see the potential that has to support an organization's mission. And so it was, 20 years of nonprofit work and an understanding of the corporate environment and an understanding of the jobs that come with the technology sector and how that can give veterans a sort of second career, where a place where all of their life experience can be really valuable.
That's interesting. I was reflecting on my career, sitting in rooms with all kinds of people. My background's degrees in engineering, right? Naturally looking for a problem, and every nail needs a hammer, right? But I look back over the people I've worked around, and there are some people, when a problem comes, they just kind of put their head down and go back to their desk and get back to their cog and put it in the wheel. But there are other people who look at the unknown and they see nothing but opportunity. Like this is a place to go shine. And I think particularly in tech, this is not something you go to school, you learn it, and then you just get on the train and write it.
Mm-mm.
It is constantly
Constantly
reinventing.
learning.
And service members, like nobody does on the way out what they did on the way in, right? They constantly have to reevaluate themselves and retool and reskill. And they're pulled out of this one group and dropped in this other group. So they have to learn personalities and all those things. So I certainly see that's,
and they have to be ready for curveballs to happen at any given
Sure.
point. And they take it, they look at that, they evaluate their options, and they move forward. I mean, they're problem solvers. There's so many talents and skills that they bring to corporate America.
You didn't say this phrase, but I found a quote in an interview you did last year: passion for potential. And you just mentioned about when you see potential that's unmet, like you just personally are motivated by stepping into that, going, let me help you get here, because man, there's so much more and you're this close. How do you, there's a lot of self-gratification that comes from that, from helping somebody. And I'm kind of want to highlight some of this, because I do want to speak to the non-veteran who might hear this episode and go, what can I do? But talk to me a little bit about how that came to be a phrase in your life. What is it? Does that a bug your mom planted in your ear? Where did that come from, and how does that play into what you do?
It was just sort of this pattern that I saw. At one point, I was being interviewed for a publication here in Austin, and that was the headline that came out of that interview was, she has a passion for potential. And I was just like, well said, because when I look at, whether it is my favorite thing to do in the Austin, sort of nonprofit community was like, give me a problem to solve, give me a turnaround, give me an organization that's struggling, and let me go reinvent it. I love building things. I love fixing things. I think in a StrengthsFinder, restorative is the name of, like, you want to go in and kind of like see everything come together in the strongest, most impactful way possible. So a lot of the organizations that I've been involved in, again, either capacity building organizations or artists. I really love the arts. We need more of that. And I think you have the people who have an incredible amount of talent that aren't necessarily given the opportunities that they deserve, because it's not something that is, I guess, valued the same way in society. And that was just sort of this pattern of, give me the thing that's got a lot of opportunity to it that isn't necessarily realizing all of that. And there's been some learnings along the way. There are people who, for whatever reason, don't want to reach their potential, and that's okay. But then there's opportunities where you think about, a fundraising event. I've done a lot of those for different Austin area nonprofits, and all of that raises money, raises awareness for this mission, this impact to be made that is designed to give something back to the community, whether it is beauty, whether it is, economic mobility, whether it is, kids education, whatever that is, something is going to strengthen this community. And that makes the world a better place for all of us.
Yeah.
When I was in business school, and when I applied, this was right before we started Merivis in 2013. I did my executive MBA here at UT. And one of the things that I realized in that journey was I had applied to learn how to climb the corporate ladder, essentially. And the more I learned while I was doing all of this nonprofit engagement work was sort of this, I want to take all of what I'm learning in business school and apply it to the nonprofit community, because you have a lot of really, really passionate people that are trying to solve the world's problems, and a lot of them that can kind of take over. And you're starting to make again, I look back at what we did during the pandemic. Was that the best business decision? Probably not. Was it a decision made out of passion for helping other people get paychecks? Is that the reason we put all of our resources towards, our training programs during that time period? All of that experience, combination of school, career, where my people thought I worked in the nonprofit community well before I did, because I was doing so much volunteer work. All of that kind of came together when Merivis was formed as sort of, I have all of these different aspects of skills, experience that's going to help Merivis succeed. I know how to talk to corporate. I understand what goes into a nonprofit. I know how to fundraise. I care about seeing people's potential be realized. And I think all of that just uniquely set me up to come on as executive director and see things through the last decade.
Well, it's inarguable. Passion's contagious, right?
It is.
In the for-profit world, quite often it's lacking passion. Like there might be passion in the leadership. There might be passion. There's usually passion in marketing. But when the boots hit the ground in a large organization where people are, again, you're just kind of cogs in a wheel out there, you don't feel that passion. There's not always an effort to instill it across the organization. I think companies are learning that now. During COVID and during the recession, as companies scale back, you're trying to do more with less people. And you're not going to do that if there's not passion. You can only whip the horse so long and they're going to quit. So
and I
they
think
had to find a way to put that back. Yeah.
And so much of that is culture that starts at the top with leadership. I mean, I think when leaders are passionate, I think that does trickle down, but that requires a lot of very intentional and very strong leadership to kind of communicate that the passion that they have for their product, the opportunity that they have to make a difference. I think corporations have just as much opportunity to do good in the world. It just, they have different parameters that they're responsible for. Yeah. I don't report to a board of directors. I don't have stockholders that I have to listen to. I can, and being an independent 501c3, we have the opportunity to really look at what the market needs and change our programming based on that.
That's convenient in tech because you're going to have to adjust, right?
It does, yes.
Soapbox moment. You're very upfront about how you're not a veteran or a military spouse.
Yeah.
And yet you still see this org as a calling on you. What do you say to people if or when you get pushed back on how can you possibly be effective if you're not a veteran?
So and that does come up. I mean, I know the veteran community, the military community is they're very close with each other. They have that shared experience. I can't relate to what it was like to have to move every 2 years because my spouse was being, reassigned. I don't view my job to be a subject matter expert or to necessarily share. I can have an enormous amount of respect and reverence for the experience that they have gone through. I can identify with it, but I know how to pull in people that can. So again, I think about my job in building Merivis is to pull in the resources that are going to make a difference in their experience, even if I can't do it. I also am a big believer in, if somebody wants to help you succeed in your career, let them without, necessarily making assumptions or judgment based on what you have in common or don't have in common. I think, again, I did a lot of work with young professionals that were females trying to advance their career. And I told them, I said, it is wonderful to have female mentors. That's great. Don't shy away from having, a sponsor or a mentor that is a man. He's going to have a different experience than you will. And I think that diversity of sort of perspective can be really valuable. And anybody who's willing to help you, take advantage of them. Don't discount necessarily that, they don't understand what I've gone through. I absolutely agree. I don't understand what you've gone through. That doesn't mean I'm not willing to help you kind of, advance and take steps in your career path. And I can certainly connect you to others that have gone through what you've gone through to ensure that you feel like you've got someone that understands that you have sort of that shared experience. So again, I think, we have a lot of volunteers, a lot of coaches that are just as passionate about seeing people succeed as the ones that come in that have military experience or that have gone through our programs. And I think making sure that people learn from everyone, be a sponge, and ensuring that somebody might have this shared wisdom or this insight into, the ecosystem and sort of how technology is changing or how the Salesforce economy is changing. Make sure that you're taking advantage of that person and what they have to offer as well, even if it's a little bit of a different experience than what you've got.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, you're not trying to extend their military training. So having not been military trained doesn't disqualify you from helping them pick up where they left off there and now step into the civilian world. You very much have done that. And that's what you're trying to help them navigate. And to me, that's what actually makes you more qualified to help. Certainly, if you've had military experience, of which you have board members who can help with this, that have walked that walk. They're now on the other side and go, I can look back at what I learned in the military and I can actually say, we did this in PT, we did this exercise, whatever. This is how they trained us to prepare for missions. What does that look like in civilian work? Yeah. But you have people that can help tell that story, that can be a part of that team, that squad that to help with that. This is a life you've chosen that will wring you out, right? It takes a lot every day to get up and reinvent yourself every day in a world that's changing that you have to keep up with. What keeps you going day to day? Given how challenging the economy is, you mentioned the job market, how it looked at the end of 25, beginning of 26. But I got to think nonprofit in particular, right? The rules of being a nonprofit, what you can do, what's tax deductible, all those things go into that.
Yeah.
What makes you keep coming back and doing this every day?
Glutton for punishment. No, I absolutely love what I get to do. And again, it goes back to the people. It goes back to seeing people send me a Slack message saying, Kate, I got the job. It goes back again, that file of thank you notes that I have. The volunteers that I have that I can call in and say, hey, we need some support for, navigating what is this essentially a very challenging economic time. We have people that, again, I got an email in December of one of our corporate partners who just said, hey, we know you're doing a ton of good, surprise, Merry Christmas, here's a donation for end of year. The people that look at what we're trying to do and say, we recognize that we can't do this without the resources and the support of the broader community. Those are the people that help us fulfill this mission, right? Merivis is an organization, but it is an organization made up of an enormous amount of people, board members, volunteers, corporate partners, advocates, alumni. All of those folks are the ones that I feel are the important piece of this, and giving them an opportunity to change someone's life, to change someone's career. That is my purpose. I've been very intentional about who I surround myself with, both in a personal and a professional sense. Those individuals that lift you up, those individuals that say, yes, I'm going to get in the trenches and help, with whatever this project or the initiative is. I'm going to show up year after year or cohort after cohort. I'm going to make sure that, I'm advocating for you to get the resources that you need, because we all care about seeing the veteran community be set up for success after they've served our country. It's the people that keep me going and the success stories that keep me going. I mean, I think you had on your show, Emily Skelton, who's a Merivis graduate. And I remember interviewing her, and the way she lights up when she's talking about community, you can just tell she is doing her dream job. And that makes me so happy. That is, to me, seeing potential be realized, seeing someone who's thrilled about what they get to do every day, that is compensated appropriately, that is able to purchase a house, that is able to send their kid to college, that is changing a trajectory of someone's life. And that really is that's what keeps me going.
And I'll add one adjective to that. They're givers. They
Yeah.
don't stop giving when they come back.
No.
A milspouse or service member, like there's no such thing as
It's that purpose.
Absolutely.
Purpose.
Yeah. Find a purpose and lay into it, so that
Yeah.
your desire to help people do that and their desire to be purposeful. I think the worst thing in the world is to find somebody who doesn't have that purpose. Like, I don't know how you get up every day. It's hard. It's getting harder as I get older. You described, again, I went back to several past interviews you did, not so much to copy them, in fact, just the opposite. I wanted to learn from some of the things that you had said in some of those and try to, in my mind, say, how does that apply to what it is you're doing? I heard you describe doing a pullover or a pit stop during rapid times of growth. Are there parallels in some of your personal lessons you've learned and that vets and milspouses face during their separation journey, right? It's not a time where you go, you know what? I'm out of the military. I think I'll take a year off and just figure it out. No, you got to find a place to live. You got to get your kids in school. Are you near your family or not? If not, you got to get to know people so people can watch your kids, that you can just go do life. All those things go into that. But in your mind, what is a pullover, and what are some times in the recent history where you've had to do that?
Right. So, I mean, I think momentum's a really powerful thing. And one of my favorite, quotes is object in motion, stay in motion, object at rest, stay at rest. And it's, you can get going on a trajectory that is not satisfying, that is not fulfilling, simply because you have not given yourself permission to take a breath and reevaluate. Now, yes, you have to be able to pay your bills. You have to be able to, have housing, have a roof over your head, take care of your kids, all of that. But I think a lot of folks underestimate sort of what their opportunity is to drive, right? It's like they're caught up in the current of a river. And unless you make a distinct decision that says, I want to change the position of where I am, that can be really, really challenging. Again, especially when you're kind of in this survival mode. Merivis has been going through a lot of changes, certainly over the last year, when we're looking at, kind of what the market is needing in terms of skill sets. One of the things that I think is really important for organizations to do, private firms to do, teams, organizations within a company, personal, even sort of personal or with your spouse or with your family, is to stop and take stock of what is working and what isn't working. And that can be really, really challenging. Again, I mean, I've used the term with my board several times where I'm just like, it's like we're, an F1 driver. And if we don't pull over and switch our tires out, they're going to explode. Like we're going to wear through the tread and we're going to have an accident if we don't take a beat to reevaluate sort of the direction that we're at. And I forget where I read it that talks about, when a plane takes off from, like, let's just say Washington, D.C. going to Hawaii, they're not necessarily going like pointed directly at Hawaii at that time. They're constantly making checks throughout that journey to ensure that they're landing, that they're angled correctly to head towards whatever that destination is. I think making those course corrections and taking the time to invest in yourself and look at, where am I going? Do I have the right resources? Do I have, the right people in my life to ensure that this is going to come to fruition? And is this still the right heading? Again, I went to graduate school thinking I was going to climb the corporate ladder. And by the time I was done, I was like, I want to go take this all into nonprofit. I mean, I completely changed my direction. And I think staying in, it's really hard to sometimes hear that little voice inside you saying, like, hey, this isn't really you. This isn't authentic. This is what's expected of you. But, taking the time to just have, maybe it's, half a day on a Saturday morning that you go to a coffee shop and just sort of reevaluate things. I think all of that's really, really important, especially around this time of year when people are getting started with, New Year's resolutions. And, a lot of people have sort of those should resolutions, right? Is that really what's authentic? Is that really where you want to be going? Or is that just what society is impressing on you and you feel obligated to see that through? So, I think and sometimes life will hand you those opportunities, sometimes in a very blatant way, where you're being given a time that says, hey, maybe it's a layoff. I've talked to a number of people who they got laid off. They started up their own company and now they're employing, 6 people and growing a business. Those are kind of like looking at those setbacks or those kind of the curveballs that come at you and looking at those is there an opportunity here? I am, a little Pippi Longstocking a little bit, where like I will see, and I get this from my mother, I see the opportunity in everything. And I am obnoxious sometimes with my friends where I will say, hey, here's the silver lining in this. And I've got, friends who are just like, I don't want to hear it. I just want to be mad. But I'll be like, but there's an opportunity here if you want to see it. And if you want, and this might just be a gift from the universe to say, you're not on the right track. You need to reevaluate, look at everything in terms of possibility and opportunity, and gut check that against what really motivates you and what feels authentic to you and your life, because you only get to do this one time.
Yeah. Life doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? I mean, I got to think you're going through school, and just thinking through military conversations. Jason Pomeroy was on a little while ago, and his deployment was turned into a documentary that's on Amazon Prime. It's incredible. And every time I talk to him and I hear any part of his story, I go watch it again. There's some great lessons in it. But I think if you understand how the military trains, it's like 20% mission, 80% contingency, right? Because life, I'm an engineer. My job is to find the things that nobody else is thinking about and make sure we're planning for them. And you got to draw a line somewhere. Like at some point you got to get off the couch and actually go do it. But you still have to have those things. But the crazy thing is you're out there doing life and those environmental factors show up. But my mission's out there and you just got to go. And maybe momentum is enough to get me there. But sometimes that environmental factor knocks me completely off course. And now I'm sick, or my kid's sick, or a parent's sick. And I don't have any extra. I don't have a way to go do this. So having people in your life, I think this goes back to that squad thing, having people out there going, has anybody seen Kate? What is she doing? Let's bring her back to the fold. And there's something about that. Again, you're not supposed to do life alone. So I love that mission focus of what you guys do, because inevitably they probably at the time they sign up, life looks a certain way. By the time it starts, it looks a different way. Probably about after the first time they get together, they might get a layoff or get sick or whatever. And all those things, there's just so many forces that seem to be against you.
Yeah.
It just feels that way. But great call out there. I can't say I've done enough of that in my life. You say I do, you have a kid, you buy a house, and then you feel like a passenger. Like I have to do what I have to do to survive the bill collectors. By the time you get the wisdom to know, now there's more to it than that, you really ought to stop and think, I don't have the energy for that anymore. I'm so glad that y'all are intentional about that. And I'm sure that your team around you speaks that same kind of language, because we need it. That's not just true for veterans. We all need that.
I think we all need that. And I'm notorious for speaking in bumper sticker. People make fun of me because I have like a quote for everything. And one of the ones that I used, during a really rough time in my life was, sometimes when things are falling apart, they're actually falling into place. And that shift in perspective of, this feels like a setback, but maybe this is a course correction, and maybe there's opportunity in this. And I think that's, I mean, again, my mother is one of my best friends, and she is one of the most optimistic, positive people I've ever met in my entire, I mean, on the planet that I've ever met. And, she is, there's always something good to come. There's always a silver lining in this. And looking at that as an opportunity to grow, to evaluate the direction that you're on, to ask for help. I mean, that's something that we didn't talk about at all. I mean, there's, sometimes there's times when you're like, okay, to your point, I can't do this on my own. And maybe this is life sending me a lesson that is, you need to start to depend on others a little bit more and recognize what you have control of and what you don't have control of. Right. And some of those lessons are tough to take, but ultimately they're going to make you a lot happier on the other side.
And there are also the times you learn the most, in my experience.
Absolutely.
All right, we get in the elevator. You've got 90 seconds. There's a veteran in there. What's your pitch? How do you tell them Merivis makes the difference?
I think Merivis is an opportunity to connect with other veterans and military spouses that have also had to navigate, what do I do after service? Or think through what resources are available to me. We're community driven, we're structured, we give you a sense of purpose, we make sure that you aren't left behind, we give you a sense of camaraderie, and you're genuinely supported by people who care about your success, both as mentors and volunteers and as colleagues. When you're going through a Merivis program, and all of that to be said, that as an organization, we're constantly looking at what the needs are in the market. We're not going to continue to train on something that isn't being hired for. I spend so much of my time talking to our hiring partners saying, what are the skills that you're not seeing in your applicants? Right. What do you see coming on the horizon that your customers are going to need and you're going to need to have staff resources for? So we're agile, because we're small. We are a relatively small organization, and we don't have a big, powerful brand like some of these other nonprofits. We've been so focused on, kind of the substance and making sure that what we're training on is really going to impact your career. And then again, give you that community to help you through it. You're not doing this on your own. You're doing this within a group of people that support your well-being and will open up their network, to help you get connected to an opportunity. So, again, that high touch, highly structured, very community driven model is what's made Merivis so successful over the last 10 years.
I would argue that's probably what's made our military so successful too. Training is high touch, a lot of community. There are a lot of veterans or programs or campaigns that can feel like the military community is being used. How do you approach that type of commentary of what you do? I would doubt you get a ton of people pushing against what Merivis is doing, but there's probably some who don't necessarily see the vision and buy into it either.
I think you have a lot of corporations and a lot of businesses that set up we're veteran friendly and, we're hiring and all of these things. And a lot of that I see as a resource. Even if they are, maybe necessarily their intentions aren't the best, if that helps you get, expand your network or develop a new skill set or, be recognized and highlighted as one of their program participants. I think I'm big on principles and I'm big on justice, and I don't like seeing, organizations that aren't doing things ethically highlighted. I don't,
right.
I want substance. I want, morality. I want a lot of, people to do things for the right reasons. But if they're not, you don't have control over that. Right. One of and I've had these conversations with some of the folks of that's completely out of your control. But is this a resource for you? Yes. Is it a resource that's going to help you in your career? Take advantage of it. Again, I don't like to reward people that or organizations that are maybe taking advantage of the military community. But I also believe that if there's an opportunity for you to get ahead by leveraging that, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I do think that you're being honest about it. And I think, you make sure that you're being very honest and upfront with others to make sure expectations are set appropriately. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's a very hot topic. And ultimately, this is sort of the thing that I've had conversations with, is at the end of the day, businesses have financial responsibilities. They have duty to their shareholders. They have to do, that has to take precedent. Government entities, nonprofits, community organizations, they don't have those same limitations, right? So those are the ones that I tend to gravitate more towards. But again, if the resources are available, just know what their responsibilities are as a private firm. And we could have a whole separate conversation around even some of the nonprofits that have gotten caught, more I don't say fluff, but like they weren't living up to their mission, or they had some really ridiculous salaries, or there was resources that should have been put towards the programming maybe weren't allocated in an appropriate way. We're all human. We're all just trying to do the best that we can. And Merivis has been criticized, from people as well, which again, I'm a one person organization doing as much good as I possibly can. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. We don't have the resources necessarily that we would like to go, add an additional 5, 10, people. We're doing everybody is doing the best that we can, and offering grace to some of those organizations, those people, and just being honest about what their capabilities are and what their responsibilities are, and make sure that your expectations are set appropriately. I think that's just sort of the nature of society and what we're doing. And I believe that people are going to see, they're going to see the motivations of people at the end of the day, know what you care about. And if you're like, hey, I don't want the help of this organization because of what they're doing, then that's your decision.
Right.
And you have that agency.
Let's flip the coin over. One of the reasons we started this podcast was, if you just go out and Google help for veterans, 2.1 billion results, right?
There's a lot.
Google's good at finding stuff. And we're not out here to discredit any of them. And I would never ask you to do that. We're intentionally seeking out organizations we have firsthand knowledge to the quality of work that they're doing, the passion they have, the potential they're helping people reach. All that's by some of your buzzwords, to reach all those things. One, what is it you think that sets Merivis apart? I want to give you a chance to kind of highlight that. But two, you have to, at the end of the day, go, we can't do everything. But here are some things that we're aware of that every veteran or every military spouse faces. And here's some other organizations to give you a chance to maybe just acknowledge some others that you're aware of around you, that sometimes that might be a handoff or a resource that you recommend people to go to.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the value proposition of Merivis, again, it feels like a family. It's a tight-knit community. Everyone that's a part of this is ultimately focused and will prioritize your success. We don't have a lot of people. I mean, all of the volunteers that we have that come into, and work with our program participants, they are passionate. We have, volunteers that have, I think we're on our 49th admin cohort over the last 10 years. And we have people that have coached for half of those because they are so passionate about what they do. They want to see people succeed. They want to help you build your network. But yeah, there's things that, we don't have the funding, we don't have the resources to do. And, I'm also big on, do what you're good at and let people do what they started in. Other organizations, FourBlock is a favorite, especially if you're transitioning out and you're not really sure where you want to start. They're very good at kind of going deep into what are your priorities? What are the skill sets that you bring? What matters to you in your career when it comes to flexibility, pay, type of work, environment? Are you working solo or are you working on a team? They're very, very good at taking someone through that. We have a longstanding relationship with Hiring Our Heroes, and they do a very good job of getting people getting their foot in the door. Certainly during kind of the heyday of 2019 and 2020, people would go through the Merivis cohort and they would funnel right into Hiring Our Heroes. People would come to Hiring Our Heroes, apply, and if they weren't selected, they'd be like, "Hey, you got to go get some more training. Here's Merivis," and we were literally flipping people back and forth. And so those are two organizations that are very near and dear to my heart. Locally, I just had a conversation with someone locally that's setting up an organization called Patriots Hall. And it is basically, it's a community meeting place for people that want to connect with others that have going back to our earlier conversation about, you're not in this alone. Let me get you connected to that community of people that have a shared experience with you to offer up resources and validation and help you, keep connected and have someone to lean on. But Patriots Hall is a little organization that started right outside of Austin, and they do a lot of wonderful programming for the veteran community in Central Texas. I think the Salesforce community has been fantastic. Texas Dreamin' has been a huge proponent for Merivis. They've given us a platform every single year at this community-driven conference. Canderful is fantastic. Blue Star Families is wonderful. Blue Star Families is again, a wonderful way of creating community with people that maybe moving around too often to really kind of create that on their own.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of organizations that do a lot of good, and have the resources, have the reach to really, make an impact and complement what we're doing on a very kind of granular.
Yeah. The takeaway I think I have after, I think we're at 24 episodes now, but just talking to veterans and mill spouses, there's no one organization that does it all, but just start. Go find one and plug in. And once you get in that door, they'll go, yeah, here's the end of us, but for this, go here, for this, go there. You and I will pull a list together of some of the resources you mentioned. I just want to continue to promote the ones that, again, we have firsthand knowledge to what they do. Last question, celebrating 10 years is a milestone. I'm sure it didn't just come and go with cake and a party, and you guys have big plans for your future. Any of those plans you want to share today?
A lot of what worked for Merivis, maybe, even 5-6 years ago, isn't working the same. AI, data management did not have the importance that they do in today's hiring market. Technology is shifting so quickly, and a lot of our programming is shifting to match to that kind of next wave of skills. The other thing that you're going to see a lot from Merivis in the next couple of years is sort of doubling down on soft skills, because those are things that can't be replaced by technology. You have to be able to resolve conflict. You have to be able to manage clients. You have to be able to lead others and manage and motivate teams, whether they're people that report to you or just people that are cross-functional. We're going to be launching
things AI cannot do.
They can't, right. And those are going to become more and more important. You're going to see some things from us in 2026 around sort of like almost foundational level, so platform-agnostic training to, again, learn some of the skill sets that are going to be complementary to the rise of AI and agents. So yeah, so there's a lot coming. I don't know if I can cover that in the next couple of minutes.
That might be another episode.
But But again, Merivis is kind of going through this really fantastic transition at the end of our 10-year anniversary. And again, looking at how are we serving people, going back to the pandemic, where we are changing the way that we deliver our training and our programming to meet people where they are and under the circumstances that they are living in, whether it's personal life, financial constraints, all of those types of things. And that's kind of the silver lining of, being a relatively small and agile organization, is we can make those changes based on what we're hearing from our partners in the hiring space.
It's a beautiful story, Kate. I don't for a second think you sat somewhere and dreamed all of it up. I think you started with passion and you've just stayed close to that. There's a lot of intentionality around staying relevant in the mission that Merivis has. And we'll wrap up here. I just want to say, first off, thanks to your family. You mentioned you've got several people in your family that have served. So God bless your family. Thank y'all for what you've done. But thank you for the passion you have here. It is contagious. It's terribly exciting to hear. And I'll say that after watching probably 10 different podcasts you were on, none of them are the same, right? Your mission is the same, but what you're doing continues to have to shift. And anybody awake today, between nonprofit, NGOs, even what our military does, these are all moving targets you have to aim at. So for you guys to reinvent yourself and stay relevant, stay attractive in the space, continue to find funding and volunteers, it is no small thing. You make it look easy, but I know it's not. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
I look forward to talking to you again soon. I hope we can see some of these announcements and whatnot with things coming for 26 and beyond. But I really, really appreciate your time today, Kate. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me not only share the story of Merivis, but also to recognize all of the partners and the people that have made it everything that we've done over the last 10 years possible.
We're not meant to do it alone either, are we?
No, we're not.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Big thank you again to Kate Stoker and the team at the Merivis Foundation for the work they're doing to help veterans and military spouses build real careers in tech. This episode's helped you. Here's your call to action. Pick one next step today. Apply to a cohort. Reach out to one of your mentors. Update your resume. Or message someone in your community. Momentum matters, and you don't have to do this alone. And if you haven't already done so, please follow or subscribe to Military Minute so you don't miss future conversations. It'd mean a lot if you also leave a quick review. Those reviews help more transitioning service members and spouses find the show. One more favor, share this episode with a military spouse or veteran in your connections, or a buddy who's trying to figure out what's next. It could be the spark that they need. To the veteran and military spouse community, thank you. Your service, your sacrifice, and your resilience matter, and we're honored to be a part of your journey. Check the show notes for links and resources connected to today's conversation, including recommended organizations, and next steps. Lastly, a special thank you to Jason Fowler for allowing us to use his song, Mystery Road. I'm Greg Banks, and this has been the Military Minute. See you at the next briefing.